this video, I'm building and toppling Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in dominoes. What's up, Domino community, and Merry Christmas! I am so excited to share how I made this Rudolph and dominoes setup. It was quite a freestyle build, and I gotta admit, this was pretty challenging. Now, I'm gonna go into detail on how this was all put together, how I planned it, and the topple without any cuts. So let's get started. The first thing I did was decide what kind of style domino project I wanted to make. Now, in my previous Christmas videos, I've done a lot of screen links, and this time around, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to build something that felt more like a complete art piece. I wanted it to feel like if you were to look at the setup from one camera angle on a tripod, it looks like a complete Christmas card. And that meant I wanted to fill the entire space with dominoes. There really wasn't a lot of empty floor space, so I really made sure to pack in all the dominoes as densely as possible to really fill it up and make it look like a complete work of art. For this setup, I wanted to be really intentional with how everything was arranged and how the connecting lines were laid out, so it kind of flows and fits with the art of the project. So step one was making a field plan of Rudolph, and because that was the title of the video, I wanted to make sure that this image of Rudolph was really eye-catching. So I did a lot of research trying to find the best angle that I should use to build Rudolph's face. Should I do a full body shot? Should I just focus on the head? Should I do a front view or a side view? And ultimately, after a couple of iterations, I decided to do a slight side view because I felt like it showed the profile of Rudolph's face a little bit better, because you can see the nose kind of sticking out and the eye is really big and draws you in. The antlers are pretty detailed, and there's a lot of very specific angles that are in an antler. So I actually realized it wasn't great to make the antler as part of the field plan. I really wanted to try something new, so I was like, maybe I could just make the antlers in a freestyle build. I can just freehand that. It doesn't need to be part of the grid field plan with a template. I can just build it as a separate thing and connect it to the field. And I kind of debated for a while whether or not I wanted to make this field plan a full grid field with the full green background. And I eventually decided, I don't think that's gonna really fit the theme of this project. Something that feels so boxy kind of locked me into that. So I decided to make it a shaped field and add a green border around the entire head of Rudolph. And this kind of helps to just make it pop out a little bit more because the brown dominoes blend in with my brown floor, and I really wanted Rudolph to be a huge centerpiece, so having the green around it just kind of makes it really stand out. The field starter on the left side is actually made up of the field that I already built. They were originally part of the grid, but I had to kind of angle the dominoes on a 45-degree angle so that the dominoes would go down and trigger each row. After Rudolph was built, I decided to make a whole bunch of different themed Christmas items around the face. So I started Googling what are some common Christmas themed items. I made a list and then planned it out by laying flat dominoes on the ground. I really like pre-planning it by just placing flat dominoes. It's not necessarily an exact plan, I'm gonna place the domino exactly there, but it just helps me get a rough idea of how big everything should be and where everything is going to be arranged. Because once it's arranged on the floor, I can look at it and be like, wait, this project has too many colors of another color that's right next to it, so I'm gonna move it over here. So after I mapped it out, it was time to decide how I wanted to build each piece. So I decided to go the route of making shaped fields, but take it a step further and think of ways that I can build each project without using a field for every single one. So for example, with the present on the right side, I decided to make the bow fall first, and then the outside green portion falls over. Little details like that, I think, make a setup a lot more interesting and kind of give it an element of surprise. In every setup I make, I always learn something new, and in this one, I realized as I was making the holly in dominoes that there were much better techniques to build it. There are really defined corners and curves and points to it, and I originally started making the triangle technique for the field, but I realized that it wasn't defined enough to really form the shape of the leaf. So I decided to go with a more freestyle build with this, and having the curve of the leaf follow the curve and bend of a domino helped a ton. You can really make any single shape in dominoes. As long as you define the endpoints and the border, you can just fill in anything inside of it and it'll make the shape. Another fun build was the Gingerbread Man, and I gotta say, this gave me quite a bit of trouble. It did fall over by accident, and yeah, that had to be rebuilt. I wanted to make the frosting like of the eyes, nose, gumdrop buttons with flat dominoes on top of the field, but I realized the Gingerbread Man wasn't big enough to fit all of it, so I did have to like take out dominoes from the gingerbread and then replace it with colored dominoes for the frosting. You know, if I'd made it a little bit larger, I definitely would have placed the dominoes on top because that kind of plays with like the elevated surface of the frosting, but because it was so small, I kind of just did what I had to do, but I'm still pretty happy with how it came out. I also made a sleigh bell in dominoes, and you know, originally I was going to make this just a simple shaped field, kind of like the ornament and the star, but I realized I have too many fields already, like shape fields, so let's try something else. For this one, I made a spiral, and spirals are always interesting to make images inside of them, so I started by making the full center line because I knew those dominoes were a little bit of a darker shade of gold than the rest of it, and then I could kind of make a perfect circle spiral just by connecting the lines. And the black dominoes for the holes inside of the bell are not exactly placed in the line of the spiral, but some lines will be toppling and hitting 2 lines of dominoes because of where the black dominoes are placed, but I think it still works. I think that also helps it to fall a little bit sooner, otherwise it would take a long time for the spiral to fall over. With the candle, that really clearly could have been a domino field. That would be very easy to do, but I was like, nah, I already have some fields. Why don't I make it a turtle field? We don't really have anything that's elevated right now, so I decided to stack the dominoes on top of each other, and when it falls over, it's gonna make a much bigger cascading effect than just a traditional shaped field. On the left side, we have another present, but instead of using the same technique as the green one, I decided to make it a rooftop technique. And this is kind of a nice trick because it'll just like crumble down in a really cool effect and give it some more variation instead of having a traditional domino line fall over. And we also have a 3D structure in the back. I really wanted to include one sort of 3D element, and making a present out of dominoes seemed like a very fitting thing to do. This one was fun because I was able to build the ribbon and green dominoes around the red dominoes, and I could even put an actual bow on top of the present, so that was a really nice touch. For the Christmas lights, I was originally going to make them red and green, but then I realized I kind of already had a lot of red and green in the setup, and I didn't want it to become too redundant, so I made it a little more colorful, and hopefully that makes the setup pop out just a bit more. Now for the connecting lines, I wanted to make sure that it was all densely packed in, and originally I was going to make the lines green or red just to kind of like fit the theme of Christmas, but because there were so many other green and red Christmas items, I thought that would kind of blend in and you wouldn't be able to see the projects that I made, so I went with a more neutral kind of effect and realized that, oh, if I just use light blue, that can look like snow. It's like Rudolph, or like Rudolph is flying through the sky, you know? So I used a little bit of blue and a mix of white and some clear dominoes, and this kind of just gives it a more winter frosty kind of vibe, and I think it contrasts really well with the colorful Christmas themed projects around it. Like once the connecting lines are in, it really makes it a full piece, and it just looks so cool seeing just so many dominoes arranged in different ways, different orientations, different angles come together and then topple over. And so after a full week of building, I finally finished the project, and I am super happy with how it all came out. You'll notice that the entire overall project isn't an exact rectangle. It's kind of more like a trapezoid, and that's to account for the fact that the camera, like the main camera angle, is looking at it on an angle, and from that angle it looks like the whole floor space is filled, but if you look at it completely overhead, like from the GoPro camera, you can see it's like definitely not a full rectangle. So this is Rudolph in dominoes. Leave a comment down below. What is your favorite part of this setup? I would love to hear your thoughts, and maybe I'll do more of that in the future. But for now, I'm going to share the entire topple with no cuts so you can see the full camera angle and just enjoy Rudolph in dominoes. That is Rudolph in Dominoes. I am so happy with how this project came out. It is truly, I think, one of my favorite like standalone art pieces. Like, I think it's really fun to make these dense projects and just fill as much floor space as possible. I feel like there's a lot more I could do with this style of building, and now that I've done this, I am really excited to do something even larger in the future. I also want to give a shout out to our featured community member, Defining Dominoes. Thank you for being part of this community and making some awesome domino videos. Have a great holiday season, and as always, I'm Lily Hevish, and keep on building.